is what I do when I'm bored. Waiting on materials. Should have been here a week ago. Oh, I'm starting to get dizzy. Wow, that was a mistake. Middle age. Welcome back to the channel today. Thank you for joining me again. Today we're going to talk about one of my absolute favorite categories in the entire knife community, and that is daggers. All right, daggers are one of the most fascinating subject pieces as a knife maker and as a historical nerd, as a fantastical artist, as a just geek in general. Daggers are one of the most fascinating subjects to me and one of the most fascinating blade styles there are. So when most people think about a dagger, they think of something medieval in nature, something along these lines, like a key-on dagger or something similar to this. That's kind of the most common mental picture most of us get when we hear the word dagger. Something along these lines, or like a combat dagger, something, you know, kind of the common tropes and themes in the dagger community out there. But today we're going to talk about a special genre that I've been really fascinated with lately and been delving more into historically learning about and trying to create, and that is the San Francisco Dagger. So what spurred this on is I was looking through it. This is always, as a knife maker, I've always had a historical drive to learn more about knife making throughout history and stuff like that. But you know, there's a lot of different genres out there you can get lost in. So recently I came across an old magazine I had sitting around, but an article by Jim Sornberger, who is a really well-known and prolific knife maker in the community. He's been around since the 80s. Late 70s, early 80s, he's been at this, so he's been at it a long time. He's a superlative craftsman. He's got a lot of experience, specifically in the San Francisco style dagger that we're going to talk about. So I stumbled across his article in the 2017 issue of Knife Magazine, and the article was actually about California gold quartz. Okay, so not specifically about the dagger itself, that style of dagger, but the gold quartz used in the embellishment of daggers during that period. So we're talking the California Gold Rush era, okay, specifically that region and that era, 1800s to mid 1800s, in that time frame, mid to late, you know, anywhere in there. There was a genre of knives that kind of started to become popularized by the makers of that area during that era. We got there. And this style of knife is not what you would think of as a traditional dagger. It has a lot of Bowie inspirations. So it's actually inspired largely by Bowie knives of the era in its construction and handle material, or handle shapes and stuff like that. And the blade itself being a spear point blade, so symmetrical both sides, but single ground, one bevel with maybe a swedge on the back. And the real kind of highlight point of these blades was that they were generally highly embellished. So you're looking at Gold Rush era California and the aristocratic approach to collector grade knife making, with some like this example from Stephen Rapp has got actual double-sided dagger blade, but it's still the spear point coffin handle simple guard dagger, but with gold quartz frame handles, gold frame handles, all kinds of fancy stuff they did with silver and gold and engraving and gold quartz and stuff like that. So that was like the real language of those daggers that started to evolve in that time frame, specifically around the California area. And in San Francisco, more like if we want to really dial the aperture down, the San Francisco makers of the day pioneered this style and these expressions of artistic outreach through their daggers and stuff like that, in the way they're building the blades, the way they're building the handles, and the way they're embellishing everything. So that's the era we're talking about, and it's highly embellished, highly engraved, highly you know, sophisticated, you know, jeweled expressions and stuff like that. And we have a lot of great masters today in the community who still do this. So we're looking at guys like Jim Sornberger, Stephen Rapp, he's also another fantastic master. Buster Warinsky really just blew it out of the water with this kind of stuff. Kurt Erickson, Julie Warinsky, Erickson, they still are some of the crew of folks in the world today that really do this style, and they do it really well, and they do it really to a higher level of justice than the makers of the California days, the California Gold Rush era could ever really do it. This craft has been elevated so high beyond what it used to be, but still, if you look at historical examples from the time frame, you're looking at makers like Michael Price, and then some of the factories coming out of Solingen and the UK. So there was a lot. There was both custom makers in the area that specialized in this style in San Francisco. So that's why we call it the San Francisco Dagger. There's a few other names that this type of and style of knife is known by, not just the San Francisco Dagger, but also like the San Francisco Bowie, the California Dagger, or the California Bowie. So it's a subgenre of the overall bigger picture of American knife making in the early parts of the 19th century, 1800s, 19th century. Got it. It's a subgenre of the expression of knife making that was going on during that century. And it's very specific in its embellishment and blade shape. So I got into this article and it kind of re-fired me up for exploring that style again and that type of knife for myself. As somebody who's fascinated with daggers in general and always kind of have been, it really inspires me to explore all different aspects of it. But there's a lot that goes into a Keon dagger. Like this guy right here, a Keon dagger has a lot that goes into it with not only guards, fittings, handles, construction style, but the blade itself. The blade itself on daggers like this is, how do we say it? It is pain in the neck. Daggers have a pain in the neck aspect to them that is both alluring as a craftsman, and you just got to do it. You just want to do it and you have to do it. But then you get to doing it and you're like, why am I doing this to myself? Because there's so much symmetry that has to be perfected to make a dagger well, right? And that symmetry is the hardest part of it, is creating a symmetrical and even and all that good stuff all the way around. So sometimes that gets a little exhausting, and the price for pennies is payoff for that. If you're not a well-known art knife maker or dagger maker, it's not high. Like there's not a whole lot of demand for them. Let's put it that way. So you could spend hours and hours and hours and weeks doing something like this, and then it just sit on your shelf for the next 20 years. So it's a labor of artistic expression and a labor of desire more than it is a labor of business profit. Like doing it as your work, your daily work, as a professional knife maker. So that leads me to where I kind of went with this next round of thought process. Okay, I love creating daggers, but I also have to make a business out of this, or I have to make a living doing this, and so time is limited. That's the point, being time is limited, and I wanted to create a dagger that could be used in kind of a more modern combat style, or a more modern combat category, but was inspired by a historical style. So I started designing my own California daggers, San Francisco daggers, California Bowies, whatever you want to call them. Let's call them a San Francisco dagger just for congruity. And I came up with, first I came up with a 6-inch bladed version that was a little bit fat. All right, so it was a little bit chunky. So I scaled it down just a little bit to a 5-inch version. And this is the one I actually made. I'm gonna show it here in a second. And I showed the blade of it in the previous video, but I actually have finished the knife since then. And then here is a smaller version of it, what you would kind of refer to as a pillow dagger, or a like a lady's dagger, something like that. Like just smaller, thinner, more feminine in its characteristics. And so I did create the 5-inch version. This is a prototype. I prototyped it out as a combat knife that I could make relatively quickly, inspired by a historical style, but I could also take as a canvas, a good canvas for me to use for fancy versions and for basic versions like this. So it has a 5-inch blade, about 1 inch wide, California or San Francisco dagger styling. So spear point blade, single bevel, hollow ground with a swedge. So I got my little swedge there going on. And I've got a copper guard. The copper guard is really cool. I did some hammer texturing. I'll try to get that on video here. Did some hammer texturing on the top. And then I did some patina and aging before mounting on the rest of it. And then I used an actual vintage micarta block for the handle. So the handle's vintage micarta. It's fantastic looking stuff. It's got a lot of character to it. It's got a lot of patina variation, and as you grind through the stuff, it starts to change in its tones and colors, and you really kind of never know what you're going to get with the striations and stuff. So it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing that kind of unravels as you're shaping it, and I love working with it. I actually used a through tang with a threaded pommel, and so on the back end I have a 1/2 inch thick stainless barrel nut that I used to thread onto the pommel. So it's actually got a really sturdy back end that could be used in smashing, bashing, and crashing, skull crusher, or whatever you want to call it. So it's lightweight. I mean, it only weighs just a few ounces, you know. A very lightweight blade. It turned out to be fantastic. This was a just kind of a dry run or a test run of the concept for me to see how it would work out as a combat knife first, because embellishing with like the frame handled gold inlay engraved thing like that is a little beyond my skill set right now. So I'm working towards that eventually. I'd love to do those type of embellished knives as well, but to me, I'd like to provide something that's a little bit more of a functional blade first for a broader amount of people, something that you could actually carry in battle. This one has an 80 CRV steel blade, and I've not worked with it a whole lot, 80 CRV too, and I like it so far. It was very simple to heat treat, very simple to grind, and very simple to finish. I didn't do a super crazy finish on it. I just went with satins, flats, and etch, and then I did a hand polish on the bevels there after I etched them. So it's a simple finish, something I can reproduce and recreate pretty quickly for, you know, kind of not really mass-produced purposes, but for higher volume production of these type of things. So if I want to make more of them a year to get out to more people to actually use in combat now, or to, you know, use in that category, for that category of use, collection or combat, it doesn't matter. Like, it's a field knife. The first version here that I was going for is actually just creating a field knife. What is something that is strong and robust with a 3/16 inch thick blade, a simple guard but effective, very sturdy handle material with a lot of strength because of the through tang and the threaded pommel nut, with a big hardened stainless steel skull crashing nut on the back end, that you could legitimately do some serious damage with. That end of it right there fits great in the hand. Really feels great. I did a little bit of sculpting on the handle for kind of a more flared back end, so you've got, you know, it snugs down in your grip really well there, both ice pick grip and, you know, otherwise just normal grip. You could also get a really good fencing grip with it too if you needed to, for doing that kind of thing. The blade itself is just a simple spear point blade, nice and thick, hollow ground, so you got a nice thin edge there, but a thicker spine so that it will actually take a lot of damage in the field. It'll take a lot of beating, you know what I mean? The final production models of this, I'm going to use, you know, like production model, my catalog model of this that I'm going to make, I'm going to use stainless, CPM 154. That's kind of my go-to right now, and RWL 34 as available. So those are going to be the go-tos for this. I have a couple higher end versions of it I'm going to work on for the Nashville Custom Knife Show coming up on November 22nd or 23rd, that weekend, around there. At the end of November, the third week in November, right before Thanksgiving, is it right after Thanksgiving? I'll put the dates down there, I don't remember. But I'm going to be in Nashville at the end of November for the Nashville Custom Knife Show, held by 50/50 Productions. So I'm going to have this one probably with me because I'm going to carry this one. This one's going to be my kilt gear knife, you know, for when I'm all kilted up and want to do, you know, knifey things. It's, interestingly enough, looking at Stephen Rapp's website, and he refers to his more as San Francisco dirks than anything. So not daggers, but dirks. And it's interesting because they do more fall in line with this blade style being a single ground bevel, but spear point does actually historically fall more in line with a Scottish dirk than anything else. Than like a Keon dagger or a French, you know, main gooch or whatever dagger. So interesting tidbit sidebar. You're welcome. So anyway, I'm going to have a few of these on the table at the Nashville Custom Knife Show. I'm going to do some higher polished versions, and then I'll probably do one or two like this that are just the simple beater versions for daily, you know, hard use type of stuff. And they're going to have micarta handles, copper guards, and simple finishes, that kind of thing. And then I'm going to do some with polishing and all that good stuff. I'm going to put one, I have an idea for one, the smaller one, the pillow dagger. I want to do really high grade mirror polish, tip to tang, and then African blackwood, and then a cool guard with some special things in it, but African blackwood with some carving on it. So that'd be pretty fun to do. But yeah, that is, I mean, in a nutshell, that's what this whole, that's where this all came from for me. This rabbit trail I went down in the last few months. But it's a style that I've been inspired by for a long time, but I haven't really ever tried to make a lot of them. And I kind of was working out the details of the handle shape and style that I wanted to do this. So it's kind of a throwback to that San Francisco Dagger style of the era, the mid-gold rush era in California. But still a little more modern, maybe, or maybe not even modern, but maybe more classically inspired modern handle shaping and style with the traditional style blade. So spear point, single-edged with a swedged. So that's what, let's wrap it up there. That's all I really wanted to talk about today. Simple video, quick video, the San Francisco Dagger and Dirk. I'm excited to be offering this type of thing in my catalog. If you are interested in getting on a wait list for one of these, or just being on my notification list for batch drops and stuff like that through the website, go ahead and sign up through my website, calebwhiteneknives.com. You can get on my mailing list, and then you'll get notified as I put knives on the website for sale. And I usually about once a month put out an email. I might be kind of dialing it back to doing more quarterly drops, or show the drops in conjunction with after shows and stuff like that. So bigger batches of knives, more at once. But occasionally throughout the weeks, I'll put up some random stuff that I have going on. And Instagram, I still have at Caleb White Knives. X at C White Knives, so you can find me there. Facebook, there is a Facebook page out there. I think it's at Caleb White Knives. We all know the story. My wife manages it. I don't put anything on it anymore. I just kind of stick to YouTube, Instagram, and X. And so if you want to follow my work, if you want to see what I'm doing in the daily in the shop, the Instagram feed is the best place for that. It's not the most reliable algorithm for getting information to some people out there, because it just kind of has gotten choppy the last few years, and it's not really great. So YouTube videos, I'll continue to put them out about my catalog, about what's going on in the shop, updates and stuff like that. And yeah, thank you for joining me again. I appreciate you sticking around and listening to this. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, click the notification button if you want to get notified when I put new videos out. And y'all have a sharp day. Stay cool.